Okay, so we're going to go to the movement details layout, which you can do through this menu, or more easily, you can just click on movements, right? So I'm going to look for a logged voyage that will have it. Okay, so this is the Nuestra Señora de la Consolación, alias El Buen Fin, from Manila to San Blas in 1773. And this is so far the only logged voyage that we have. I haven't been able to enter the other one from the British. This is from the Archivo del Museo Naval that I showed you the list. The one from the British Library that I have in tabular form is just kind of messy because sometimes we have longitudes but not latitudes, and it's not clear where the places are. And I'm still trying to figure out how to enter that. Okay, so this voyage, where should I start? Okay, I'll start with the basic information panel, right? So hit, at the very top, the ship or route label. People working with routes, in this case, Elke and Pierre-Yves, are coming up with their own notation. And that will be useful. In the route points, I'll show you the route points at the side. There is a place for you to enter it. And of course, we have the ship class, the flag. The whole situation with the flagging of ships is kind of messy. We have Spanish for galleons. We have Spanish, Philippines. I've included Manila Spanish here because this used to be a private boat first that was doing intra-Asian voyages. And so it belonged to Manila Spaniards, right? And we have the name not of the captain, but of the pilot who wrote the navigation extract. I don't know what Felipe Jonson, he's obviously a foreigner, but we don't know the identity, and there's not really a title or description for him at this point. Here in what is reference value, this is very important. This ship actually does have it. No, it doesn't. Here we can have the currency, right, for the reference tax, the kind of reference tax, the amount. There's a space for the declared total, the ships. This is all things that have been more applicable to the voyages that I have entered, where I have this information, but it's important to have that information. Here in the tabulated total, I'm going to look for one that has that information. Let's see. Okay, so what I'm going to do to find that is I'm going to go to find up here, then reference value, and let's look for one that has a tabulated total, right? And here I am using the asterisk key, which for searches is very important. It can tell you which records actually have a value in that field, right? The other side of it is to use the equal sign, which gives you the opposite. In which cases are these fields empty, right? So we're going to look for the ones that are empty. Why? Because we can also use this. Maybe it's better if I zoom in. Yeah, it might be better if I zoom in now. Okay, so this part here, right? If I click on it, it shows me I can go from the results that had something in that field to the results that didn't, and back and forth. So it's essentially the same search. Okay, so we have 307 voyages that do have that information, right? Oh, yeah. Okay. So here we see that this has a reference tax and an amount. It has a declared total. Zoom in. Okay. It has the reference tax, a declared total, and then the tabulated total, because this is a cargo voyage, which actually doesn't match the declared total. And okay, I will cover the other tabs in a second, right? The other thing that this has is that, you know, it has the option for a constellation. This will be very useful for marking galleons that went in pairs, right? We will know if they went in pairs or not, which is an important question as to why was there years with only one? Why were there years with two? And right now it has other constellations, which, you know, for the first voyage of the Dutch to the Indies, which had 4 ships. Not necessarily all the ships are in the database, but here we have, for example, a constellation for Angela's latest input, which is 3 junks that went together to Kelantan. So we can study them as a group. So the constellation part. Now, this here would show you how many ships are in the constellation. And this is a cargo crew voyage. I've created this ontology for the types to try and accommodate the data that we have now, right? So the very basic part is it a voyage? So something that has a time component, it actually happened, or is it a route? That's very clear. Then we have something that has become, that had to be shown in the ontology, which is the calamity voyages. And there's about 100 of those right now. And they're all the shipwrecks and voyages that have diseases and other calamities en route. And then the log voyages are those that, you know, come from navigation diaries that have, you know, point to point exactly with dates, with observations, sometimes the hour at which they left. There's crew voyages that don't have any cargo, and then there's the cargo voyages. And this is a cargo crew voyage. Now I'm going to zoom out. Okay. Now I'm zoom in. I'm not going to, here this shows location, but it's a very simple voyage, right? It's a voyage that went from Santo Tomé, right, to Manila, and then returned, but it went to Java instead. And here we have the arrival and departure dates. Okay, I will come back to the root points with an example that has more information. The agents, here we have, you know, all the agents, and we can see here with this apply segment, right, who, and Milapor is Santo Tomé. I will explain why it shows up as Santo Tomé in the locations table in a second. So we want to see who is there on Milapor to Manila. Okay. Milapor to Manila by segment. And here we only have a captain, and we have here the numbers, right? So that would be, that's a very useful piece of information. This allows us to put both numbers and people who are quantified as a class. Okay, Manila, Batavia, here we see the whole shebang of all these people who were on there, right? And that's quite cool. So why does it say Manila, Batavia? Here it says Manila, Java. And that's because as I was entering my own data, I realized that I really wanted to keep the names as they were in the sources, right? But we really need the label names for the locations so that, you know, it can all communicate. So I created this thing called the lexicon. I had already introduced it for, it also exists for commodities. It hasn't been tried out for commodities. And the idea is that it would allow you to enter the information in that original language. And if we have the names in that lexicon in our locations table, we can just, look them up and import them almost automatically. It doesn't do it quite automatically just yet, but so here are the lexicons. The default is label, right? And so those are the names that are in our database that appear as the label for location. So let's look at, I'm gonna go to locations just to show you that. Locations details. Let's look up, so here we have Milapur, right? And here it appears that the preferred source name in Spanish is Santo Tomé. Here it gives the additional variants, right? If I had written the name as STO Tomé, it would not work. So, but it gives you the options in the lexicon once you enter them. So here we see that this is, oh, interesting. We see that it is one of, there are 9 ships that went through there, right? Cool. Anyway, you can click on the little globe and it will take you to that voyage. And this is interesting because this is one from the Batavia data set rather than the information that I've brought in or what has been collected before. So already it is combining the information. Anyway, Milapur. Movements details again. If you're entering it with the lexicon that is ES, so Spanish, it will give you the options in Spanish, right? So it won't give you Milapur. It will only give you Santo Tomé. So here in the lexicon, and this is something to be careful with because if you change it, it might not work that well. So if you're going to use the lexicon, talk to me just so that we can be careful. And if you change it, make sure to change it back. So here it does have both the label and the Spanish lexicon information. You see here now that there's a meridian that is useful for the logged voyages. So I will explain that in a second. Okay, so locations, I will come back to it. Agents, I've shown you, this information. The other thing to look at in agents is this agent's description. And this is information that cannot really be put in the table. Ideally, that's what that would be for. But at this point, what we have in agent's description is, this is short, but we have long agent's description. There's a commodities cargo description as well. Some of them are extremely long, for example, for cargo. I'm going to look up the Covadonga, right? Nuestra Señora de Covadonga. This is the, okay, agents. This is the, the voyage that ended in tragedy, right? We see the locations here. It was captured in Cape Espiritu Santo and then was taken to Canton by the British. The only agent we have so far now is Jeronimo Montero. I'm going to zoom in to make it easier. Jeronimo Montero. The National Archives price papers would allow us to add much more. But this has a huge commodities. No. There's some that are multiple paragraphs, and some of them cannot be rendered in tabular form, but others can. And that's one of the pending things to do. If you go to the reports here, report both passenger and cargo data in text form, pending entry into portals or relevant fields. Okay. So agents, locations, commodities. This one doesn't have commodities. And return to Consolación. Type. Cargo. We need to fill that in. Oh. I know how to find it. I'm going to enter. How many Felipes? Okay. Felipe Johnson. Okay.
Memo, which category to select if it's both a cargo and a calamity voyage?
Well, we don't really have any voyages like that. And I think that most calamity voyages will have been chosen for that, so I would keep them as calamity voyages. I mean, we could go to the movements table, and you zoom out. The movements table is a bit complicated right now. Locations count. So if you go to the table here, you can see the location count. So here, the log voyage has 47 locations, but only one agent. No commodity counts. So if you wanted, there's going to be a calamity at some point. Source count, issues count. Calamity counts are here. Okay, so you would be able to look this up, by using the asterisk. Or the equal sign. But yes, let's keep anything that is a calamity for simplicity. Let's leave it as a calamity voyage, because I think that that's where it, that's sort of the analytical, category that we want to use it. I think that the ones that are cargo voyages is because they're part of the more systematic body of cargo voyages in MIAT, for example. Otherwise, I don't know, if there's a calamity cargo crew voyage, then we might have to come up with some other super voyage or something. I don't know. Okay. What part is I going to? Commodities. This one doesn't have commodities. But the commodities are, I think that that's something that's covered in the video, so I'm not going to be redundant about that. But again, make very sure that if there's multiple segments, that when you are filling them in, you have the right segment, right? So we had cargo that only goes from Isla de Kelly to Sirangan or something, then you have to choose those, right? Otherwise, by default, it will make a commodity for the entire voyage from beginning to end. But I think that I'm mostly the person who has entered more commodities, but all the functionalities are there. They're explained in the original videos as well. Okay, before going back to locations, the cross-references, that is always very, very important because we are historians. In the case of voyages, the only cross-reference that it allows now is with sources. Because we have introduced now fields that would allow diseases, which was the other option, because there's already connections to locations, there's connections to people, there's connections to things, so the only commodities, so the only thing missing would be the sources and the diseases, but the diseases have been incorporated, right? So here it's very interesting because this is a voyage that is in a category that I have created for our able to monitor what is happening. This is what I've called an integrated voyage. So this is information that is original from us in Trans-Pacific and also is in MGDB, so Jose's dataset. Others are in the Galleon status are labeled as MGDB originals or Trans-Pacific originals. Okay. So now I want to go back to the same one. So one of the things that I want to impress upon you as you explore the database is that when you run queries, it's really helpful to go between the table and the layout. Especially the layout makes it easy to access related tables that you can't immediately access here. And I'll show you with one of the searches. Okay. Oh, integrated voyage. Let's go back to Gallon status, integrated.